Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart. The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Both big, fat, epic fantasy novels. You know, I'm going to be showing you my entire George R.R. Martin book collection here, but before we get to that, I just wanted to talk about big, fat, epic fantasies, because George R.R. Martin writes big, fat, epic fantasies. Big books, 1,000-page books. Who else writes big, epic fantasies? Well, I've got a few of them over here. We've got Brandon Sanderson. We've got Steven Erikson, Tad Williams, Pat Rothfuss. I mean, these guys are writing big, huge. There's only about a half a dozen to a dozen people on the planet that write big, fat, epic fantasies. And I am one of them. I am one of the dozen of the 9 billion people on the planet. Only about a dozen of us have been granted the opportunity to write big, huge, massive, epic fantasies. And mine go right on the shelf next to all of the greats. I just wanted to point that out. Enough about me. Let's talk about my George R.R. Martin book collection. If you followed my channel, especially my writing advice videos, I talk a lot about how before I wrote my big, huge, epic fantasies, I studied the way George R.R. Martin wrote the Game of Thrones series. I mean, I studied how he paced things, how many words he used to describe each character that came on scene, how many words he used in his exposition and backstories and flashbacks, how many words he used to describe horses, castles, forests, monsters, dragons, people, everything that they were wearing and doing. I studied, I took notes on all of it, because George R.R. Martin is a master writer. He's one of my top 5 favorite writers in the world, and he is a master. He makes it look easy. If you want to learn how to write epic fantasy, you should study everything this guy did. Now let's get to the book collection itself. I remember when Game of Thrones first came out. In fact, I bought this very copy, a first edition copy, the very first day it was on sale in the bookstore. And I read it. This would have been in 1996 or 97. I can't recall. I read it, and then this was back in the day when I was in college, and I used to paint Magic the Gathering cards. You know, I got a couple of them here. I got some of the Dune cards and the Lord of the Rings cards. Anyway, I used to paint Magic the Gathering cards. I used to do a lot of illustration for Dungeons and Dragons game. And so I used to go to a lot of the conventions, like Comic-Cons and World Science Fiction Convention. I went to the World Science Fiction Convention in San Antonio, Texas, in the mid to late 90s, right after this book had come out. And I was one of the first people to ever read it. George R.R. Martin was not a famous guy at that point, and I knew he was going to be at the convention, so I took my book along with me, my first edition book, and I got him to sign it there to Brian. So I've got a first edition signed Game of Thrones, signed back in, I think he might have dated, let's see. No, it just says, "To Brian, all my best, George R.R. Martin." Anyway, so that's the highlight of my whole collection, to be honest with you, is that. But we do have I was a Game of Thrones fans before Game of Thrones even anybody knew about it. That's all I'm saying. And I'm name dropping because I met the man. And he's inspired me to write my own huge, fat, epic fantasy books. Of course, we've got a first edition of Clash of Kings. I remember at the same convention in San Antonio, Stephen Ewell, the artist, was there, and he had this painting hanging up in the art show, and it had the cover here, this book hadn't been released yet, but they were promoting it pretty heavily at that show with the cover painting. So I did see the original Stephen Ewell. It might be Paul Ewell. They're twins, Stephen and Paul Ewell. They both did a lot of book covers back then. I can't remember which one did this. But anyway, first edition, Clash of Kings. I loved these books, man. When they first, I was collecting these. I was probably George R.R. Martin's first fervent collector. And then, of course, we got the Storm of Swords, first edition hardcover of Storm of Swords. Now, some of you might be thinking, hey, Durfee, I've got better collection of George R.R. Martin books than you do. I mean, I got all the leather-bound collector's editions, you know. I don't have any of those. I don't really collect a lot of leather-bound collector's editions. I'm usually just a first edition print run from the main publisher collector. Of course, we got Feast for Crows. Waited forever for this one. When did this one came out? In like the year 2000 or 2001, and then I think we had to wait till 2005 or something, and the Feast for Crows came out, first edition. And then we had to wait, I don't know how long, for Dance with Dragons, but this one came out in like 2011. Again, first edition. I was first in line to buy it, like with all the others. Not only that, but so I don't screw up my hardcovers, I got paperback versions of all of the series here. You know, everybody loves the little paperbacks. I mean, they're great for reading. They're great for carrying around. You can write your name on them. You can write your name on them in magic marker so nobody knows. So nobody's going to steal that. If it's got my name on it like that, nobody going to steal it. Ain't nobody stealing these books. Got my name right on it. Okay, what else we got? We got the, oh my lord, the George R.R. Martin Funko Pop Bell. Let me get him. We've rescued him. Put him back. I'll edit that whole part out because that was stupid. The Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Again, a little sort of a side story to the Game of Thrones series. Then we've got the Fire and Blood. I think there's going to be a sequel to this one coming up. I have not read this. I hear it's just like a big, huge, like, history of the... let me know what this one is like. I hear it's just kind of like the Silmarillion was to Lord of the Rings, this Fire and Blood is to the Game of Thrones. I do collect all of George R.R. Martin's short stories. He's got this great... These two great volumes of short stories, some great short stories in there. And then, last but not least, I have the 3 books that he published before he wrote Game of Thrones. He actually was a horror, that's right, horror novelist before he wrote Game of Thrones. And he wrote Dying of the Light and... Fever Dream, and Armageddon Rag. So if you want to get any of his horror novels, they are also available, and I've got them here. And, you know, that's not a very big collection, I mean, but the guy hasn't written that much, and especially in the last 10 years, you know he has not written that much. I mean, he's not like Terry Brooks coming out with a book every year. He's not like Brandon Sanderson coming out with 20 books every year. He's not like, you know, me coming out with big, huge, epic, fat fantasies every 3 years, because I'm on about a 3-year pace between books. But still, a very, very accomplished body of work from one of our master writers, one of our greatest writers in a history of the world, in a history of fantasy. There will never be another Game of Thrones, folks. I mean, this is just like classic stuff, and let's hope we get to read the final 2 books eventually down the road. I am not in a particular hurry. I'm fine waiting for however long it takes him. I know some of you are not, but I'm cool with it. Hey, man, I know how exhausting it can be. I give the man credit for writing as much as he did, because I've just written these two plus the third one. I've only written 3 of these big fat things. So these big fat epic fantasies are, they'll drain you. They will drain you. I mean, anyway, that is my George R.R. Martin book collection.